Okay, real talk. You open a new manhwa, chapter 1. The main character is, let me guess, getting bullied. Failed his awakening test, ranked last in his class. His dad is disappointed in him. His girlfriend left him for a stronger guy. His lunch gets knocked out of his hands by a guy he'll be forcing to kneel by chapter 50. He is, by every measurable standard, a complete and total loser. And you already know, that by chapter 150, this man will be so powerful that gods are sending him friend requests. So the question is, why? Why does every single manhwa do this? Is it laziness? Is it formula? Is it something deeper? Because I actually looked into this, and the answer is more interesting than you think. Let's start with the thing everyone says and get it out of the way. Relatability. The argument goes, readers connect with characters who struggle because struggle is universal. Nobody opens a manhwa wanting to read about someone who already has everything. You need someone to root for. Someone whose victories feel earned because you watched them lose first. And look, that's true. That's genuinely true. But it doesn't fully explain why the loser starting point has become so specifically codified in manhwa. Because it's not just that the MC struggles, it's the particular flavor of how they struggle. Always ranked last, always publicly humiliated, always dismissed by someone who will later kneel in front of them. That's not just relatability, that's a very specific emotional formula. And to understand where it comes from, you have to understand something about Korea. South Korea has one of the most intense academic and social hierarchies in the world. The pressure that young Koreans face, from school rankings, from family expectations, from a culture where your test score can determine the entire trajectory of your life, is genuinely extreme. The primary readership of manhwa on platforms like Naver Webtoon is young Koreans, students, people who are currently living inside that hierarchy. And the fantasy that manhwa offers them isn't just power. It's a very specific kind of power. The fantasy of being dismissed, of being told by everyone around you that you don't matter, and then being proven catastrophically right in the most satisfying way possible. That's not an accident. That's a story designed for an audience that knows exactly what it feels like to be underestimated. The loser starting point isn't just a narrative device. It's a mirror. And the glow-up isn't just cool to watch. It's genuinely cathartic for the people reading it. But here's the part nobody talks about. The economics. Manhwa on Naver Webtoon and similar platforms runs on a weekly serialization model, meaning the author needs readers to come back every single week, for years. And the weak-to-strong progression formula is genuinely one of the most effective tools ever invented for keeping readers hooked on a weekly schedule. Because every chapter can end with the MC just barely not being strong enough. Just barely not good enough. And you come back next week because this week, might be the week he finally snaps. The loser starting point creates an almost infinite runway for escalation. You can spend 50 chapters building toward a single moment where the MC finally stops holding back. And when that moment comes, after 50 chapters of humiliation and struggle, the payoff is enormous, proportional to the patience it required. Strip away the loser origin, and you strip away the machine that makes the whole progression satisfying. And now, the part where I get slightly annoyed. Because here's what happens when a formula works this well. Everyone uses it. Not because it fits their story. Not because it serves the characters they've created. But because it worked for solo leveling. It worked for the God of High School. It worked for Tower of God. So now every manhwa that comes out needs a protagonist who starts at rock bottom, regardless of whether rock bottom makes any sense for that particular story. And you end up with these bizarre situations where the MC is supposedly the weakest person in the world, but he magically has the tactical intelligence and emotional resilience of a seasoned military general the second he gets a system window. The loser label is just stuck on top of a character who doesn't actually behave like a loser. Because the author wants the formula but hasn't done the work to earn it. And that is where it stops being a narrative tool and starts being a crutch. But here's what gives me hope. Because there are manhwa that looked at this formula, understood exactly why it works, and then did something genuinely different with it. The Boxer doesn't give you a loser. It gives you someone who is already the best in the world and feels absolutely nothing about it, which is somehow more unsettling and more interesting than any loser origin story. Surviving romance doesn't give you a weak protagonist who gets stronger. It gives you a protagonist whose growth is entirely internal, emotional rather than physical. An SSS-class suicide hunter, which technically uses the loser origin, does something smart with it. Kim Gong-ja starts weak, but the series is honest about the psychological cost of what it takes to stop being weak. The loser isn't just a starting point to be discarded. It's a wound that the story keeps returning to. That's the difference between a formula and a story. One of them forgets where it started. The other one never lets you forget. So, why does every manhwa MC start as a loser? Because it works. Because it resonates with a specific audience in a specific cultural moment. Because the publishing model rewards it. And because somewhere along the way it stopped being a choice and became a default. The best manhwa in the genre know exactly why the formula works, and use that knowledge to go somewhere the formula never anticipated. The rest just copy it and hope nobody notices. Subscribe to 0 Chapter Left.